Our second presentation looks at what inclusive banking could look like for autistic people in Australia. I think it's such an interesting topic, thinking not just about the physicality of a bank, but also thinking about the online space. And we have Dr. Ru Ying Cai, who's a postdoctoral researcher with ARCAP, and Andrew Radford, who's an advocate, who will present for us here.
Hi, I'm Ru, and I'm a researcher at Aspect Research Centre for Autism Practice. Today, I'll share with you some of the findings from our inclusive banking project and discuss how banks can be more autism friendly based on these findings. Andrew is a participant of the inclusive banking project. Near the end of the session, Andrew and I will do a Q&A where you'll find out about Andrew's banking experiences. The aims of the Inclusive Banking Project are to understand the financial and banking experiences of autistic adults and identify what banks can do to become more autism friendly. We surveyed both autistic adults and carers and parents of autistic adults. We have also interviewed people to get a more in-depth knowledge about their experiences. We were curious about various financial and banking experiences of autistic individuals. Today, I'll talk about some of the findings around banking experiences. So we had 45 autistic adults aged between 18 and 67 years complete the online survey, as well as 23 parents who were mostly mothers. We wanted to find out about people's usage of financial products and services, and this graph here is a summary of those results. So all autistic participants, except for one individual, had a day-to-day transaction account. The other products frequently used by autistic adults were high interest savings and superannuation. For accessing day-to-day transaction accounts, online banking was both the most common and preferred way to access these accounts. The two main reasons for preferring online banking are having minimal interaction with banking staff and convenience. So here's a quote from a participant around minimal interaction with banking staff. The person said, "I'm quite happy to talk to a system. When the system they work strictly according to their internal logic, and once I understand that logic, I can use them. It's an Asperger thing. Rather than dealing with the nuances of people and have to waste energy trying to be friendly." And then the second quote is around convenience of online banking. This participant said, "Well, for starters, you can do it at home, sitting in front of your own computer. You don't have to actually go out and talk to anyone. There's no need for face-to-face. You can just basically transfer money, and you can have all the papers sitting in front of you and doing it in your own time and making notes. And there's no standing in a queue, because queues are one of the things that gets you stressed out." We asked the autistic adults, as well as the parents and carers, if their banking needs were met. More than half of autistic adults thought their needs were met. The main reason for this is that their banking needs are simple, and banks met these needs. So the main needs were to allow them to save and also access their money. When autistic adults were asked why they thought their banking needs were not met, a number of reasons were provided. So first, banking staff did not understand autism and associated life circumstances. For example, one participant had difficulty with making mortgage repayments due to unstable income. Participants also talked about their difficulties going into a branch and having face-to-face contact. Information provided by banks were often not accessible in Easy English or Auslan, and there were also issues around phone banking. Parents also indicated how much they agreed or disagreed that financial institutions met the needs of their children. Similar to the adults, more than half of parents were satisfied. The reasons for needs not being met, though, Were banks not providing products or services for people with more specific needs? Banks offering products and services not beneficial or suitable for their adult children? Banking staff's insistence on speaking to their adult children when this is not feasible. So an example is when an adult child is non-verbal or minimally verbal. And banks also did not allow parents to manage the bank accounts in their adult children's name. So here's an example of a banking product and services not being suitable for autistic adults. The problem of upselling. So this parent talked about the experiences of her daughter. She said, "I'm concerned that my daughter was given a credit card when her only income is a disability support pension. My daughter can cope when everything is okay, but if problems occur, she has no idea how to resolve them." Although we did not specifically ask about upselling, a number of participants during interviews spontaneously raised this as a concern for them in dealing with banks. Upselling of financial products and services to autistic individuals can be problematic when some individuals cannot understand financial products and therefore cannot make informed decisions. We asked participants in the survey the banking problems and challenges they have experienced. The top banking problem was associated with going to a bank branch. So this is related to people's sensitivities to sensory stimuli, things like loud noises and fluorescent lights. They also found it difficult to fill in forms and understand brochures. During the interviews, a common issue raised by autistic individuals and parents and carers is related to banking staff not having a good understanding of autism, intellectual disability, and the associated experiences of people. Finally, we asked autistic adults and parents and carers if they thought banks should do something different to support autistic individuals, and majority responded yes. It's interesting to note that although more than half of the participants felt that banks and financial institutions met the needs of autistic adults, a large proportion of participants thought banks or banking staff could do things differently. So based on these findings, we made two main recommendations to banks. The first is to increase staff awareness of autism. We thought the following key areas should be covered by autism awareness training. So the first is that many autistic individuals experience sensory differences. Some autistic people find loud noises, fluorescent lights, and strong smells uncomfortable. Another key awareness learning topic is social and communication differences. A number of autistic individuals are non-verbal. For some people who are verbal, getting their points across during conversations can be challenging. And this may be due to executive functioning difficulties. Also, autistic individuals are vulnerable to strategies such as upselling, as I've mentioned previously. Not all adults will have the capacity to make financial decisions, so upselling may cause people to sign up to products and services that are not suitable to them. We also thought that minor adaptations, such as breaking complex ideas into simpler chunks and using the visual aids, would be helpful to autistic individuals when communicating with the clients. And finally, including family and support network in financial decision-making is critical, given a large proportion of autistic adults depend on others for support. The second main recommendation to banks is to introduce more inclusive products and services. So banks could offer alternative products and services. An example is, since we know that the majority of autistic adults are struggling financially and have poor financial well-being, it would be so helpful to people if banks could waive account keeping and other fees. We thought it would be helpful to autistic adults to introduce autism champions at select bank branches. These designated staff members can be provided with additional autism training and act as advisors to autistic clients. This suggestion was well received by interview participants. One autistic individual said, "If there's someone there at a bank that you could just sit with and ask questions and they're not biased, just someone there that's supportive and understands autism and can just not be judgmental about stupid questions." Disclosure of autism can help flag autistic clients and allow banks to provide tailored supports. This works really well in schools and tertiary education institutions. So disclosed autistic students are provided with additional support from disability support staff. So there could be a similar model in the banking industry. And also minor modifications can be made to help bank branches become more autism friendly. These changes do not have to be substantial and can use existing infrastructure. Things like providing a quiet area for one-on-one appointments, designating a quiet hour for people with sensory differences, and providing better signage and visual supports throughout the bank. And finally, but not least important, it's critical for banks to develop processes to allow parents to provide financial support to their autistic adult children. Now we have the Q&A with Andrew. Andrew, how do you feel about banks in general?
I'm quite scared of them, actually. I don't really understand what you do when you go there, and it's a really busy place. There's lots of contracts, and it is really, really confusing for me. The staff are probably really good, but I just get the way I get psyched up before going there, and if I have a meltdown, they don't really understand.
Right. So what's an example of a very confusing banking experience for you?
Okay. So once a bank staff member said to me, "Oh, you shouldn't have this card." And they chopped it up in front of me. And I didn't know what they were doing, and I didn't know what to do. I had no idea. And I had no choice or anything. And they gave me another one, and it didn't work. And then I had to get someone from the Disability Trust to come and help me fix it. It was a very stressful situation.
It sounds very stressful, Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the other banking experiences you've had?
Okay. So I don't know how to use an ATM machine, and they're too busy inside the bank. They don't really listen. And they said, "Oh, we don't have time," to me. I've gotten into trouble for signing up for products in the past. They said, "Oh, you want this thing, and I'll sign you up for something that I didn't really know what it was." And then there is a phase to get out of it. But then I said, because I wasn't told properly, they waived it. But yeah, they don't really tell you about contracts.
I know from our past conversations that you prefer online banking.
Yes.
Can you tell us why you prefer online banking?
Because there's no face-to-face interaction, and you know they're not going to scream at you. People get annoyed easily, and they don't really understand. And they said, "Oh, we know everything about autism." And I said, "Okay, everyone's autism is different."
Absolutely.
That's right.
So based on what you've said, Andrew, do you think it would be helpful if bank staff received training on autism?
I think that would be fantastic, and they would understand and know what to do.
Exactly. So having bank staff trained on autism could be important. What other things do you think banks can do better to support you?
Well, I think they sort of should have easy read, because I do a lot of the easy read documents with Council for Intellectual Disabilities, and everyone will understand it's in easy read, and I think they should have a quiet area as well for people.
That makes sense, Andrew.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Ru and Andrew for your presentation. That was really interesting. I know we've had lots of commentary from some of our autistic participants sharing their own experiences of banking for good and for ill. It's been interesting to hear that. I'm sure there is a significant amount of work that we need to do to make banking much more inclusive. In terms of questions now, we will we'll have hopefully Andrew and Ru up on our screen, and I have just a couple of questions that have come through. One question for Andrew. You've talked a little bit about some of perhaps the more negative banking experiences that you've had, and I think we all appreciate them. I wondered if you've got any examples of any positive banking experiences.
Yes, I do have a positive experience. I went to a bank once, and the bank officer had a son with autism and understood my needs.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's good. So first-hand contact is helpful. There's a question came through for Ru. Obviously, we've touched upon a few of the recommendations for banks, and we've talked about training for staff and easy English. Do you know whether the banks involved have actually implemented any of these autism-friendly practices?
Right, they actually have. When we were doing the literature review for this study, we found that a couple of banks in the UK and US actually provide autism-friendly services. So a couple of examples are the Lloyds Bank and the Regions Bank. So they've got autism-friendly initiatives such as training the branch employees on autism. They provide accommodations like longer appointments and quiet areas. One of the banks also provide easy read bank statements. And another bank also offered sensory packs to the autistic customers.
Right. Fantastic. Yeah, that's really good to hear. So I guess we'd encourage everybody to get down to their bank and advocate for these sorts of changes. I think customer power is often really helpful here. I've seen some other comments, which I think we all would agree with, about the importance of training, the importance of everybody being compassionate when it comes to interactions, whether that's autism or in other areas. And perhaps also the benefits of sort of online chat and things like that. So thank you everybody for your comments and your questions.